Okay, we're back. Thanks for joining. I assumed you found the earlier two episodes useful, and I hope to add to that with this episode, which will focus on the dyna-powered wedges from the 1956-57 model year and the 1958 model year, which is known as the Holy Grail. I call the 58 the Holy Grail because I think it's the one that I know it's the one that sells for $400. I paid $440 once for one of those, and I think it's the one that Tom Watson used to hole out on 17 in the 82 U.S. Open. So I'm going to try and show you, because one of the big values of this series should be that you're able to see what the stampings look like. I don't know of any book you can buy that has photographs of the stampings. There are drawings in the old Wilson catalog, but those maybe aren't as good as being able to actually see a photograph. This is a 56-57 sand wedge, and you can see that it has a black dot on the bottom, the way the dyna-powereds have, and it's quite worn on the bottom. There's stretching, and the chrome is off on the bottom, but it's a beloved sand wedge. Likewise, on the grooves, you've got a fair amount of chrome loss. It's not terrible, but there's quite a bit. You've got a pinned shaft. Maybe you can see. It's kind of hard for this to pick up the pin, but they used to attach. They were so well made. They would attach the shafts with pins to the hosel, the inside of the hosel. On the shaft, it says it's stamped fluid feel, and you'll see that on a lot of these old wedges. But this is the wedge because of the E8 swing weight. I call it the Brute. It's unique among the dyna-powered wedges running over that 20-year period because it's got a 57-degree loft. The other sand wedges all had a 55. The 57 is more consistent with the loft seen in sand wedges, sand irons, Wilson called them until 56. They were sand irons. Those lofts were 57. So this is a continuation of Wilson's pattern of a 57-degree loft on its sand irons. But that pattern next year in the 58s disappeared and went down to 55. Before moving on to the 58s, I'll show you a couple of other 57s. Here's the pitching wedge. It's in very nice shape. Got a leather grip, nice leather grip. It's still got the original owner's name on the tag. I almost hate to take that off. On the end cap, it has the famous flags, the Wilson flags, dual flags, and you will see that stamped into many of their clubs. Their sand irons all have the dual flags stamped in, and the end caps typically had the dual flags when you've got an original grip. And it's not terribly uncommon to find the original grip, but more often than not you've got a grip that's been replaced with a more modern grip. Again, the grooves bear looking at. They little rusty, I guess, but they're pretty good, and they're sandblasted, and it's a club that's in good shape. Here is the third 56-57 that I own. This is a dual wedge. It's very hard to see the words dual wedge because the owner did some custom grinding on the bottom, and you can barely see the word dual. It's got less flange than it originally had. It's still a very heavy club, but it's 53 degrees, which is what dual wedges were. And this one has the original grip, and again, you've got dual flags. It looks, slightly different than the dual flags on the other one I showed you. Leather grip, not a bad one. I'm not going to pull that grip off. This is, really too nice. And the shafts, I don't know if I want to go into the shafts, but it's the 57s were the last year of True Temper's rocket shafts. This is, you see the little tiny green shaft band, largely worn away, but that green shaft band comes with a rocket shaft, and you can tell by the steps that it's a rocket. So that's, the shaft is one of the things used to identify the year a golf club was made, and whether it was somehow a custom club that wasn't necessarily made in the year. Now we're going to move on to 58, the Holy Grail, as I've called it. And these are, I'm going to show you 3 rechromes because that's all I have right now. But here's a 58 rechrome, and you've got the tall L and Wilson. That's important because the 1990s remake had a low L, and they say Dynapowered on them. They say in that top line that's hard to read, that's in blue, that says staff model. And then there was so much wear on the sole that you can barely see the word sand wedge. The rechroming has, all those words have been worn down and stretched out. It's got new grooves, beautiful. There are a couple places, at least 2, that do that kind of work, rechroming and regrooving. I've sent clubs to both the Iron Factory in Colorado and also to Golf Works in Ohio, and they both do fine work, but they'll rechrome and regroove, and I think the ferrule was replaced. That's a new ferrule, but it's looks very much like the original gray and red ferrule, and it's still got the pin shaft. I had them keep the pin. You can see the pin, and but I've had them put on a new modern shaft. As long as they were going to do all the work, I had them put on a dynamic gold shaft, and it's got a newer grip. So it's a very fine club, but it's the 58, the coveted Holy Grail. You've got a couple other Holy Grails. Here's one that's been redone, and they disappointingly didn't replace the pin, so it's got a hole where the pin belongs, but you can see the tall L in Wilson. Again, the word sand wedge on the bottom are worn off, but it's been regrooved very nicely, and it's got that lovely curved leading edge, which I think is really, really nice. Here's the third one I have, and this one has been customized. I bought it that way. The thing was covered with rust when I got it, but whoever got it, drilled it out, wanted it to be a little lighter. They also changed the loft down to 53 degrees or so, and it's kind of a repurposed sand wedge in a way. It's lighter, it's got less loft, and the bottom has been not worn off but ground off. All you can see is the S from sand wedge. They very professionally ground off the flange to make it low bounce. It has almost, I'm looking at it now, it might have 6 degrees of bounce, something like that. So it's it's a low bounce 58, but only because it was customized. I will show you a 58 that is original, but it's the dual wedge, but this gives you a better idea of what an original 58 looks like. You see the tall L and Wilson. Um, it's got the black dot. The blue paint is not original in the sole. That's I think originally it was blue and black, um, and you know the grooves are in pretty good shape. Original hosel pinned. It's got the original shaft band, and these had Pro Fit shaft bands. Most of I think maybe here we can sort of see, I can see it with my eye, I'm not sure the camera can capture it, but this was a Pro Fit, which is a standard shaft. And again, this is the dual wedge, which is very coveted. It shows the same ridge on the back. See that ridge right there? That's the way the 58 sand wedge is as well. It's got a ridge right there. And that would disappear in sand wedges after this year, and until they later, much later, Wilson went back to the ridge. But the 58s had a ridge. We'll talk more about it later, but I've also got several of the 58 pitching wedges. Now, those are probably the most highly regarded pitching wedges ever made. They're wonderful, they're intuitive, you hit the ball, it goes dead straight. You know, it just feels great. It's great for chipping. It's got no bounce. I want to talk a little bit again about no bounce. I'm going back to the 57. I don't have the 58 in my hand. It's in the next room. But here you can get an idea of how the club has no bounce or negative bounce. See that? The leading edge goes down in the back. It's either the same level with the leading edge or slightly below it. Great for chipping and picking the ball clean on short chips, where you know, say the ball's nestled down between patches of grass. It's you know, between the patches, kind of nested down. You need to somehow dig it out of that, and you know, so the negative bounce, which you don't find in modern wedges. This is another selling point for buying a classic Wilson Dynapowered wedge. Modern wedges, I mentioned my Titleist 680s. What people say, it's the best Titleist irons ever made, and Titleist made irons for decades. Wonderful irons for decades, and I'm fortunate enough to have a set of 680s that has 7 degrees of bounce. If you can look it up, and you know, that's the pitching wedge that you get with a very fine set of clubs. But you know, this 7 degrees is going to make it harder for you to pick the ball out of a nested lie, or pick it off of a fringe where it's very tightly, very short, and you know, it's barely even sitting up because the grass is so short. So that is, I want to talk a little bit more about the 58. It's typically a D9 or an EO swing weight. So the 50, I'm sorry, did I say 59? I meant 58. The 58 is a D9 or an EO, so it's not, as far as Wilson sand wedges go, it's not terribly heavy. You know, still heavy. And you know, if you really want something like a 58, you might look around for, these are kind of hard to find too, but Bob Vokey, I think, was pretty much copying, and I don't hold that against him, pretty much copying the 58 in his 355.13 wedge. That is 55 degrees. Dot 13 means 13 degrees of bounce. Has same shape as the 58 Wilson Staff Dynapower. It's a heavier than most Vokeys now. It's an E1, and so I think Bob Vokey was paying homage to the 58 in that those 355.13s are pretty hard to find, actually, but I'm fortunate enough to have one. I like it a lot. It's a very nice club, and Bob Vokey did a good job with that. So if you really are hell-bent on having a 58 but can't find one, maybe look around for the 355.13. Somewhat similar is the 1980s Wilson Staff JP2 55 degree, which is an EO swing weight, or the 1990s Dynapower 58 remake, but that has a narrower sole. So the remake is not only different because it has the short Allen Wilson and it doesn't have a pin shaft, but it also has, and it doesn't have the Pro-Fit shaft that the original had. It's got True Temper or Fire Stick or something, but it's got a narrower sole. But that remake has been well received. Ben Crenshaw made some favorable remarks about how it was just as good as the original. I have no idea because I've actually never tried the remake out. But anyway, there's your segment on, and I've gone a little long because I covered 3 years, which is unusual, 2 different model years. So the next segment will be about the 59 models and the 60, 61 Dynapowereds, both valuable if you can even find them anymore. So, and I'll mention some substitutes.